Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glantz. In today's episode, we talk about paying your dues and persevering through the early days when you're seeing little to no results. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Guys, they're doing it again. I'm trying to read the intro out and they're impersonating bunny rabbits and all kinds of crazy stuff in the background. It is so off-putting, but I did not stumble. You're not going to get
amazed.
me, guys.
I can't believe that you didn't.
I did that thing where you're talking. Yeah, my the sides of my mouth just started going up and I was like, no.
I even gave you a John Travolta at the end.
Oh, I missed that. I like that. Very authentic, though.
I'm wondering whether he has like blocks looking at us and just read something.
I feel like we all have to coordinate together to make this happen. Like we're going to have to conspire behind his back to get something funny.
We need to get it. We need to get it, guys.
We all need to like expose ourselves.
Wow.
You're there.
If he keeps a straight face through that, then he wins. Well, I guess he wins in two ways.
I think we all lose in that scenario.
Okay, actually, that's true. We do all lose. Also, we lose the podcast. No one's.
I thought we were a family show.
Oh no, the family show element went long ago.
Long ago.
So I'm really excited for today's topic, but we have a brief interlude before we get into it because if you've listened to the last, I think, 2 episodes, I've been telling Dustin to await a secret package on its way from the UK. And apparently that package has now arrived. So he has no idea. You can hear that. He's shaking it up to the camera.
Okay.
So he has no idea what is in this package that has arrived from the UK. We're going to get him to open it live on air right now. And remember, Dustin, this is radio. So we're going to need descriptions. Otherwise, people are going to have no clue what's going on. But take it away, my friend.
Okay. It is a approximately book-sized package. It says Royal Mail. Apparently, that's how they deliver mail in the UK. It says to Mr.
the Queen.
Dustin Lee. Yeah. It says Mr. Dustin Lee. So they are treating me with the proper respect that I also have been entitled to. Okay, so I'm opening this with a knife. It sounds like there's all sorts of little objects inside.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous about what's inside.
I would love, it's obviously not this, but I'd love if it was one of those joke confetti bombs. So he opened it and it just explodes in his face.
Now you got me nervous. Okay, I'm opening it but facing it away from myself in case he's messing with me.
Nope.
Ooh.
Oh.
Something in it.
It's a parcel of money.
Yeah, it's a wad of cash, guys.
Big roll of money.
Or it's kind of like a chicken fajita.
It says Mint Maker Studio. Have you
What
seen this, Tom?
I have, yeah. So hold on, because part of this is I said that we would plug this up. So can we get a little plug here? It is Mint Maker Studio. Mint Maker Studio. And hold on, just hold there for 1 second. So Mint Maker Studio. Yeah, if people, no one search this because it will give away what it is, Dustin. So don't search it on your browser. But for everyone listening, go to mintmakerstudio.co.uk because they have basically provided this for free and just said, are you happy to mention it on the podcast? So that's mintmakerstudio.co.uk.
That's how elaborate this is?
Yeah, this is elaborate. So this is actually someone got in touch with us, like, can we make this happen? And I was like, hell yeah.
Was it specifically to Dustin?
Yeah, it's specific for Dustin.
Okay, it's yellow bag. What the hell is this?
Come on, let's get it out.
I literally looked inside, and even when I look directly at it, I don't understand what I'm looking at.
Okay, take it out.
Okay, so
Come on, talk about what you see.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, so I see this thing says Happy Stamping Mint Maker Studio. It's like a promotional card they put in here. How to get the best from your stamps. Wait, what? Oh my lord. Oh, wait a second.
So for anyone who was
Okay.
for anyone who listened to the recent episodes, this might make sense.
Okay, so this appears to be one of those old-fashioned wooden. Oh, I get it. This is one of those old-fashioned wooden stamps with the picture of my face.
Yep.
Made from Lisa.
Oh my goodness.
And you can literally melt the wax on it. And then
That
I can
is
stamp my
unbelievably
own
awesome. Oh,
crazy
my
face onto
word.
different things.
So for anyone who doesn't know what on earth we're talking about, on a few episodes ago, we were like spitballing ideas for Dustin's like retro design marketing. And we were saying, imagine if when he sent gifts to customers, it had like an old school wax seal. And then we were like, what if we used his face for, I think Ian said that, used Dustin's face as the wax seal. And so this company got in touch and were like, we will make this for you for free if you send it to
That's
him.
hilarious.
And,
That is so cool.
So I appreciate that's a bit of a delayed start to this episode, but I freaking love the serendipity of that happening.
Yes.
Is that one, Dustin? Is that one that's already?
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
that's been
pre-made one, so you can
Dustinified.
kind of get an idea of it. Dude, I'm going to use this for like Christmas.
So yeah, if you guys want to check out mintmakerstudio.co.uk, you can literally get personalized stamps. I can't believe the chances that a company that make these things listen to the podcast. I thought that was
Yeah.
incredible. So there you go, Dustin.
is.
And thank you to the team
Thank
at
you.
Mint Maker Studio.
Thank you so much for making that happen. You just made my day. I can't believe that I've gotten to a pinnacle where I literally have a stamp of my own face. Like, what does that say? I don't know what it says exactly, but I feel pretty happy about it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thanks to those guys, and thank you, Tom. This is cool.
Pleasure, man.
People are gonna be like, "What is that?" And I'll be like, "Oh, it's my face on a wax seal."
You can add it to your random box of tricks that you've got in that room.
Yes.
It made me smile though. Honestly, when it showed up, I was like, I can't believe that's happened. So anyway, that's either going to be like a lovely little segment to start the podcast, or it's going to be us rustling around for about 7 minutes with people being like, just get to the episode now, please. So without further ado, as I always say, shall we get into it?
Most definitely.
Yes.
All right. So the premise of today's episode is, I will name no names here, but I was at a certain design conference not that long ago, and I was talking to a certain group of people, and shall we say that there was a degree of bitterness towards people that were perhaps more successful in the industry. Not everyone, but like aimed at very specific people, because the general feeling was, well, it's okay for them to talk about doing all these like big things and like how much they can charge, but what about us? Because that's completely unrealistic. So if you're some high-flying agency type or whatever, that's cool. But for the average designer, especially who's starting out or a bit more junior or struggling to find their way, it almost feels like a slap in the face, because it's like, that's just a different universe from where I'm living. And I remember being in that world where you're seeing no results, you feel like you're going nowhere, and it can be really frustrating. And as much as there's an abundance of good advice out there, and hopefully some of it on this podcast when we're not talking complete nonsense, I equally never want anyone to feel like that about this show. I never want anyone to listen and be like, well, good for you guys to say all that and share that.
Terrible.
But like, that doesn't really help me, because I'm stuck in like some crappy, like tiny town in the middle of the UK where no one's got any money, and blah, blah, blah. Like, here's reasons why it's not going to work. So I guess I wanted to collectively put ourselves in their shoes. And as I'm not going to lie, as much as part of me is like, well, stop being negative and complaining, because you're going to lose with that mindset. And there's people out there who are working and making a success of themselves. Part of me honestly wants to say that, but a big part of me is empathetic, because I've certainly been there myself. So what do we think? I'm going to open this up to you guys.
We don't have much to say.
Okay, good episode, guys. Let's wrap it up there.
I do. So I remember. I mean, I went through that stage for a long time. I think I got into design when I was 24 or 23, and it wasn't until I was 29 or 30 that I got myself in, I think can't remember anymore, around $30,000 in debt, credit card debt, which was a direct result of trying to get a start in design. But my wife was the only one making money. I was making next to nothing or nothing some months.
I mean, Dustin spent a whole lot on Linda courses. What can we say? What was all that debt? Was that like education or what? I mean, I know Photoshop can be expensive, but
some of it was education. Some of it was that my wife worked for a nonprofit, so she didn't get paid that well. And like, we just didn't make as much as it cost to live. So every month we went a little more into debt.
Okay. I got you.
And then, and then you try to treat yourself to things like, even when you don't have much money coming in, you still try to like go out to eat sometimes or go to a movie. And so that, of course,
buy a rubber stamp with your face on it.
Stamp with your face on it. Yeah. I just remember getting to the point where I was like, I literally thought I remember going to take an IQ test and then deciding after the first page to not take it because I couldn't figure out the answer to one of the problems. And I was like, I'm afraid this IQ test is going to tell me that my IQ is really low. And I stopped because I was afraid that once I found that out, I'd never have I'd just be like, oh, you can't do anything because your IQ is super low. So I stopped and was like, I don't want to know. It's not going to help me in any way. Mm-hmm. And, but I mean, I remember literally feeling like maybe I'm just not smart enough to make this work. And it felt like it was like 3 years past, almost 3 years past wanting to give up, that like finally things took off. So it was like having to just completely I got to that point. And then I had to keep going until I felt really stupid and eventually worked out. But so I can relate to that.
Think of two of the words that I used in the intro or phrases: paying your dues and perseverance.
Yeah.
So you just demonstrated both of those, right? The perseverance is there because at the point most people give up, you kept going. And I'd love to dig into why that is in a second. And then the paying your dues is basically the eating shit in terms of getting in debt, having a crappy lifestyle, and just putting up with that and going through stuff most people wouldn't. So I know Lisa is about to jump in with some gold, but just before she does, I would love to clarify, like, most people give up at that point. Why did you keep going?
It was just too painful I was going to give up, but I felt like I had to keep trying for a while longer because it's just too painful to not do it. Like, I had just so painted it in my mind and I saw so many people doing it and it sounded so amazing. I just couldn't let it go. It actually was just foolishness. It was pure stupidity looking back. Like, anyone who saw me at that point, I'm sure was thinking this guy is so foolish. But I just couldn't let it go. That's the only way I could explain it, really.
Yeah, isn't it because the alternative is worse in a way? Because that's often what drives me, even to this day, no matter where I am in my career or personal goals or whatever. It's the alternative is worse than the way I want to get to. So it's that drives me more than anything. And I guess you always have a choice in life. It's that whole, am I going to let this beat me, or am I actually going to find ways to actually get through it? And I mean, let's not kid ourselves. The finding ways can be like a really long, windy road, and it can be really difficult. I mean, it's like you said, Tom, I'm in the same kind of mind frame as you. Like, on the one hand, I get quite annoyed with people who moan about their situation and kind of just do the same thing every day and expect it to miraculously change. And then there's another part of me that I totally sympathize with that, because I know how overwhelming that can be and how you can really be kicked down and you find it really difficult to, pick yourself up again. Mm-hmm. But the point is that it's entirely up to you, like how much effort you want to put into something and how much perseverance, what your goal is, where you want to get to, and obviously circumstances have a huge role in it, so that is not a debate. I'm not saying that is up to you, mm-hmm. but it's what is up to you is your attitude towards it, how much work you put into it, your perseverance, your mindset, all those kind of things that you do have control over. And I find that,
I was just going to add to that this thing that I've noticed that of people that, and I think all of us are guilty of this, is you keep doing the same thing, like like I think Tom was saying, that you keep doing the same thing, things never change. And I remember when I first really got a piece of leverage was when I went and worked for someone that was selling things online, and I saw how they were doing it, and I realized I could have went on for 20 years doing what I was doing, and I would have never got anywhere. When I saw how he was doing it, I was like, I am so upside down on how this worked. I was so confused that when I saw how he did, I was like, oh yeah, I could have done that forever. I would have never made any progress. I had to see someone else do it. And then that made me realize that I was like, it's like,
but you took that chance, didn't you, Dustin? You actually said, right, I'm going to go and do that. I'm going to go work with a guy or whatever. You could have just sat at home and gone, well, that sounds like a lot of trouble, and I feel uncomfortable.
My business was picking up at that point.
Yeah,
my freelance business was picking up at that point, and then he offered me a part-time job or contracting work for him, and I chose him even though it was less money because I was like, well, gosh, it would be so interesting to see how he's making this work. Best decision I ever made in my life was watching how he did that.
Well, there you go.
And I spent 2 years working for him and talking to him a ton, seeing how he did it, seeing all about it, changed everything. So I think some people just keep doing the same thing and they're like, why is this not working?
Yeah.
Can I come from the angle of the fact that you just resigned yourself to think this is it? This. Because I was like, I'm doing a job I enjoy as in graphic design, and I was, generally enjoying it. And so, whereas my wife was earning slightly more than me, and I thought that was just going to be the way it is. And she was quite stressed in her job because she worked for the National Health Service, and it's like, they're overworked and sort of understaffed, and so always busy and stressful. And so I thought, my job's not so stressful. I get to do something I really enjoy. So I just thought this is going to be it. And that's what it was for 14 years.
Yeah.
And then I started with my little side hustle of, I wasn't really, it was just something I was like, because I was already selling like vector drawings I'd made, like icons and other bits and bobs, and it was just bringing in a few pounds every month. But it was an outlet for something I could create that wasn't client work. And so I moved on to a different platform, and then those sales picked up a little bit, and it was just like, it was something to do that helped me to, I suppose, when you're trying to do a website and it's not really working out, you just like, I'll focus on my little side project because that's just really helpful. Mm-hmm. And there, at no stage until that took off was there any like, I really got to have to do it. It's sort of opposite to Dustin's really. There was no like, I really need to do it. And there was this sort of achievement to get to. I was just quite happily bumbling along as a mediocre designer.
But that's
I thought
good,
I never was going to.
Unlike the person I mentioned at the start of this, you're not there being really bitter, being like, God, I deserve better. Like, I should be where they are.
I think I was quite naive because I was like, I didn't really know any of the people in the industry. I knew that there was people who won like the Golden Pencil, which is like a design award in the UK. I was just like, I'm never going to be at that level. If I was, I would have done it in college. If I was at that level, I would have been picked up at college and got a job straight out of college in terms of like working for Sony or working for whatever big brand agency. Mm-hmm. And but I wasn't. I started off doing the most mundane design jobs, but I was quite happy to to be there.
But there's nothing. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that if you're happy with that. But there must have been something to drive you to start your side hustle. Like something must have.
I suppose like in terms of like, because I was a local designer getting local gigs and they weren't really paying very much. It was just like, well, how can I? It was like selling on eBay, I suppose.
But you took that step.
I did do some like. I used to sort of deal, those when sweatbands were in fashion, the ones you put around your wrist. I used to buy them from China and sell them on, like split up the packs and then sell them on and make a profit. It wasn't big profit.
I love that.
But that was only for a while.
Thank God you
So
didn't
there
do it
was
with
like
crisps, because there's always explicit instructions. This is from a multi-pack, may not be sold individually.
exactly.
Do you guys remember this? Because I was talking to Jeremy Vesey. He owns a Hustle Supply Co. They sell all sorts of vintage fonts, and he had reminded me that I think this was a trigger for me, and it was for him. I wonder if it was for you guys. There was a guy named Tom Anders, and he made logo templates.
Yeah,
and then there was an article. There was a blog post that came out, and it said how Tom Anders made $50,000 selling logo templates. I remember seeing that and thinking, I think I have a good chance of making a go at that. Like, I think I can do that. And that was like really the start in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I remember that. He was doing. There's two things he was doing actually. There was logo templates and
actions. It was
actions, yeah, for photos. So to give them certain colours and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I was like, that is amazing. So you earned money not doing client work.
Yeah,
anything but client work. Okay, so going back to like paying the dues, I would love to dwell a little bit on like how crappy that can feel at points. Unless you're Ian, in which case he's like, yeah, I was perfectly happy. But I think for a lot of us, it was frustrating. I believe I've touched on this before on this podcast, but for me, it was especially tough when I was out of college. So I was no longer just a complete kid doing this stuff, and my friends were going and getting proper jobs and starting to earn quite well and move up the career ladder. And I felt like a child because they were literally wearing like a suit and tie into work. Some of them were getting into like the finance industry and stuff. And I just felt like the teenager, even though I was in my 20s, who was in his bedroom playing around on Photoshop. And you get so much self-doubt and imposter syndrome, and you think this isn't a real career. It's not a real job. This is like a little pipe dream.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember saying pipe dream literally in my head, like to myself all the time.
Yeah, which sucks, right? And just to put it in perspective, I started doing this kind of work very young. So I was 12 years old when I started designing designing websites.
So how old are you now, Tom? 80? It's just so weird. Like,
31. So I was 12 years old when I started doing design and entering design contests and getting my foot in the door. With my freelance stuff, I only really started doing that from like 13 or 14 with small steps, and I didn't really start getting headway with that until I was like early 20s. So I mean that's nearly a decade.
Yeah, it's a long time.
And granted, like most of that I was going to school and getting drunk at university and stuff. It's not like I was 100% of the time focused on that. But that is a lot of years of like developing my craft and getting a better quality of work and learning how to get screwed over by clients and then avoid that happening in the future and quite literally pay your dues. And I think a little bit similar to Ian, actually, it was a lot of it was just the love of doing it and feeling like there was nothing else, because I was like, this is such a natural fit for me and I really enjoy it. So that was kind of the only option. It seemed inconceivable. It was like trying to fit a square box into a round hole or whatever for me to go and get a job in the banking industry. That literally would not work. I wouldn't can you imagine that. I'd be a shambles. Rubbish at maths for one thing. It just wouldn't have worked. And so it was only when the real world started really kicking in and everyone else around me started doing better, that really put my imposter syndrome on steroids. And it went from just playing around and being like, oh, this is fun, I'd like to do this, to suddenly like, oh, maybe I won't get to do this. That's what freaked me out. That was where it really took the perseverance, when I thought, I want to do this. I've been doing it for years, but genuinely this might not earn me enough money to make a career, and I'm going to have to go and do something I hate. And that terrified me.
Yes. Oh my word.
Have you been there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was such an interesting experience for me when I decided to change my career from, being a graphic designer to full-time illustrator. And I had to eat humble pie for a long time, because there I was, a graphic designer, successful business. I didn't have to look for business, because you get your name out there, and I literally went from kind of hero to zero, if you want to call it that. Then you have to basically start from the bottom all over again. And I mean, at the beginning of that journey, I was like you just described, Tom, like, entering competitions to try and get exposure. I was contacting people thinking maybe I could become a designer, like an illustrator, part of their team. And it was just like a fail after a fail, after a no, after a no. And eventually you realize, oh my word, am I actually going to make a career out of this? Can I actually make a living out of this? And it's a terrible moment to realize your dream could actually not earn you money, and you might have to actually bury it and find something else to do. But it is exactly at that moment where you either it breaks you or it pushes you harder. And I guess it's a personality thing, I don't know, but yeah, luckily for me it pushed me harder. And obviously
I've got a question for
grateful
you,
that.
Lisa.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this the other day, and we've talked before about this kind of exponential curve upwards. And I think probably all of us have seen that to some extent with our careers, where it's like very, very slow going for a lot of years, almost where you can't see that line on the graph move. It's just a flat horizontal line just for a long, long time. And then it edges up like very slightly, but just that takes forever as well. But then you start to get momentum and traction, and it starts to really pick up sharply until it's almost going up vertically. But that takes an ungodly amount of patience. And I was kind of thinking the other day, I believe that is just because when you're in the earlier part of the line, there is way more competition, because there's a lot more bad designers out there than there are good designers.
Yeah.
So when you're doing better, like, Dustin, for example, there's not a lot of people at his level doing what he's doing, and that's fine. Imagine if there was, I don't know, 30 million retro supply equivalents at that exact equal level. Like, he probably wouldn't stand a chance unless he mixed things up dramatically. So when you're at that early designer where you're trying to get the local restaurants and you're trying to do the design contests and Fiverr and all of those things, that's what every other junior designer is doing. You're all playing the same game on the same playing field. So it's like no wonder. And so like I remember being there so vividly. It's like just trying to pull yourself along that line, just to edge up into that next tier where you can breathe a bit more, because it's not everyone, it's not 99% of designers that you're competing with.
Absolutely.
Did you experience that?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at, speaking of banking, if you look at compound interest, I don't know if you've ever had a look at how that works.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I love that.
Yeah, it's exactly the same graph that is happening. And if you use that as an analogy, like when you're in the beginning phases, your skill level's low, your experience is low, the kind of projects you've done are low. It's you kind of early phase, and as you start building on that experience, then you can start charging more, you take on better clients, and it just grows and grows, and before you know it, you're on the top of that curve. And when you can start charging the fees that you just you mentioned at the beginning of your intro about how people are saying I'm charging X, and newbies are going, well, good for you, buddy, where am I? But they started like at the bottom, and that's how it works. It's just one of those things.
No one started at the top. Any of these people that people can be jealous of, they didn't just wake up. They weren't born and they're like, oh, there I am.
Yeah, and I think what we forget, sorry, just quickly, what we forget when we listen to the people that we look up to, or people who are experienced, who have been in the game for a while, we forget that they find it difficult to go back to their beginning phases and make it sort of palatable, or I don't know, how do I explain it? It's like, like make it relatable. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So it looks like a fairy tale, but they went through exactly the same thing. So it seems that way, but they were there, just like you were.
Yeah.
When it's not really like a recipe. You can't say, okay, add a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then you do a little bit of this, and then next thing you know, there's going to be people that are featuring you places and hiring you for jobs, because everyone's got this different balance of skills and things that they excel at. So you have to, it's like jazz. You have to improvise the things that work for you. You have to pick the things that you have a proclivity for, and that's what does it. But I feel like the people too, when you're first starting, you just have no idea what you're doing. So it's almost like, yeah, maybe everyone's at a not so great skill level, but also people are just maybe missing like really obvious things that are super important.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're not going to any conferences networking, or maybe like you have no idea like how to use an email list, or maybe you have no idea how to prospect. What?
It's hindsight, right? You look back and you're like, it's so obvious, but at the time you haven't got a clue.
It is, yeah. I mean, I remember like thinking of the idea of and again, this is my proclivity was email lists. It could be something else for someone else, but I thought, well, what's the point of an email list? That seems so silly. I always literally was the back of my mind using 2% of it up, thinking, well, maybe an email list. I don't know, who cares, someday later. And then it turned out when I went and worked for someone, I realized, oh, this is like 70% of like what's important. So yeah, you're just bumping around. You're just bumping around in the dark trying to figure out what's the priority, and you don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's so much can be gleaned from having people who've been through what you were either starting to go through or, you know, midway between. Because, like, you know, there obviously times change, and technology and trends and stuff like that. But like certain basics that you can have, you know, people who've been through the industry and done a successful job of it can really explain to you, which can help, you know, like in Dusty's case about the email list, you know, there's certain things that can really help you. And like, I never went to a conference until I came over to America and went to one in America and realized the value of that and just the value of getting to know other designers. Because I live in a place where the local designers are threatened by other designers, feeling like they're going to take their, you know, their work. It's like, you know, the sort of like maybe the window cleaners are like, oh, he's taking those houses on the street or something like that.
Would you say the second most popular Instagrammer in Crowborough, where you're from, has like 1,000 followers or something? There must be no one quite in your level.
I don't know. I'd like to look and see, you know, because I suppose I thought location was quite an important aspect. I decided I suppose it was a big decision not to go and work in London because I wanted a better quality of life, because I'd have to get up at, I know, 5:30, 6 o'clock, leave really early, not get back till 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, you know, have not much time to see my wife. And then obviously when we had kids, not have, you know, there's a lot of people I know who don't get to see their kids Monday to Friday because they're back too late. And I from an early age knew I didn't want to have that lifestyle. And so I wouldn't get up till like 7:30 and, you know, not have to commute to work because I either worked in that town or just down the road. So, and that came with that sort of, I'm quite happy living this life, which is less stress, less having to commute all the time. But I knew that would come at a cost as not as well paid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought you had to go to London to be, you know, London or one of the big cities around the UK, Manchester or Leeds, stuff like that. But I was like, I see if I can make it where I live, and I thought that was the limit. I thought that was the ceiling of where I was going to go until, I suppose, lettering and selling my own products came along.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sort of opened. I literally know nothing about it, and I knew nothing about how this could be taken to another level. And that opened my eyes not just to those two aspects of, like, you know, niching down and having an online store, but the fact that all these things come, you know, like selling a course. I didn't think that was something. I thought that was just something specific people did. Like having, you know, like YouTube, I thought that was specific people did, and not just, you know, your Joe average. And so I think I just didn't know these things, whereas some people know these things and they try and achieve it. Mine was, I was just here, and I thought that was all there is, really.
Would you say, from your experience, that perseverance leads to serendipity? So, I mean, literally by sticking at it, you stumble across all these fortuitous things happening where other people give up or go and sit and play Call of Duty or whatever. Like, you try all this stuff, and so doors open that never would have.
Yeah, I don't think the thing is with me is that perseverance isn't something I'm consciously doing. I'm just doing it.
But you are definitely doing it.
Yeah, but it's without like, I'm doing it. I've got a long-term goal. I do now because I can see like, I've been on YouTube since 2012 and I'm just seeing the fruits of that labor. But I could see it like halfway through.
It's almost like making perseverance a habit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I understand the long game.
For all the listeners, that's 7 years. Ian just said on YouTube, 7 years that he's been at that.
7 years, and I still only earn $70 a month.
Yeah, and all right, so let me. And the thing is, I love that. I love it because it's so insane. Like, that is insane to the average person. They're like, that's 7 years of your life that you worked at this. But what that means
to be
is,
realistic, it's off and on. But saying that, people look at my numbers on Instagram. I was like having my hair cut yesterday, and I'm sure they thought I've got a Lamborghini at home and I've got a massive mansion. And I'm like, I'm not your like Casey Neistat, vlogger who does deals with like Land Rover and Ferrari and just stands in front. I said it's different, and I said the biggest opportunities I've had, like about 75% of the opportunities, working with Apple and stuff like that, have come through YouTube, and I've got my audience on there is 4 times smaller. So, people see numbers and they just instantly think certain things, but I'm like, actually, YouTube is hard work because it takes me a long time to do videos. And that's probably why I haven't released any for a while. But the opportunities that can bring in have been massive. Yeah. And I'm glad I stuck at it, because I wouldn't have had those opportunities. And I think people look at Instagram, and actually, even the people famous on Instagram have another avenue, and that might be YouTube, and it might be something else. It might be Facebook. I don't think that's.
It's interesting if you can look at your Instagram. If you have the patience to scroll to the bottom of Ian's Instagram, which I'm not even joking, is literally a exercise in self-control, because it's so annoying to try to like scroll to the bottom because he has so many posts. But if you go through it, it's like a time you can watch perseverance happening. You see it start pretty not good.
Let me stop you there.
Progress,
because we literally filmed this with Ian. I think maybe you weren't here when I mentioned it, but I'm obsessed with doing that to give perspective of where people started. So we started a series called Design Evolution. So James Lewis's has come out now, but if you go to the Design Cuts YouTube channel, hopefully by the time this is published, Ian's will be on there. And Ian literally did that, talked us through from his first post to now, including like moments where he broke out. But the perseverance was staggering, where it's like day after day after day with the most incremental, tiny progress happening. That, like Lisa says, that compounds over a long time. And I've always I love the concept of that for some reason, just that patience and like just being able to like out-patience other people.
Well, and I think if you were to take a little slice of his and then put it with a slice of other people that were about the same time into doing the same thing, there would be nothing extraordinary. You would not decipher Ian's as having some special thing in it that was like the magic ingredient that was just waiting to sprout. It was like, just like everyone else's, you would have been like, yeah, good luck with that, buddy. But he kept doing it and kept doing it. And like, it literally does all of a sudden, like at a certain point in the Instagram feed, like it starts to get like much better, much quicker. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait, what just happened? But I mean, you can tell, you can see it. And it's not because, it's not because of genius. It's because of working hard at it every single day.
It's more, the thing is people, something I've found out when I'm doing the sort of like, you get a lot of people do here's what my stuff looked like in 2015, and here's how it looked in 2019. I see varying degrees of how much better people get. And I'm like, well, why is that? And what I think it's like is, you plant a seed you don't just, that's it. You just wait, persevere and hope it's going to, like those who tend to their craft in terms of watering, and then when it grows up, trimming it. So in terms of like, okay, what can I do to, what's not working, what is working? And I don't do this very methodologically. I do this in terms of what things bore me. I'm going to move on and do this. And in that case, it pushes me on, because I'm like, okay, I've had enough of this, or I've done too much of this, and I'm feeling I'm stagnant.
Yeah,
I have to then sort of break on through and do something else. Whereas other people just, I suppose, are just like, oh, if I do the same old thing, I'd not learn. Because my thing is just about like constantly consuming.
Me too.
I mean,
sometimes to my failure.
Right. But Ian, what you're saying ties into what Dustin said, where Dustin, you said you would still be where you were if you were still doing what you did before you went and worked for Paid for Exist. I think you referenced, because it took that outside influence that for something to change, you have to change something, as people say, right? So you went and mixed it up and learned a whole new set of skills, and that took you to that next tier. And so I guess what we're circling around here and what Ian is saying, there are people that they might be consistent, they might persevere, but they never evolve and they never change anything. So you can be consistently bad for 10 years, and you're probably not going to get anywhere.
Something you need to do is like, and Tom does it loads on his thing, is like critiquing, but yourself, and seeing, okay, how can I improve this? Or is this consistent? Or is this, just looking at all the things and thinking how, I suppose, what's the word you're looking for? I used to have to go through
iteration
at work,
right? It's auditing is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, auditing your work and just seeing, okay, is this best I can do? And sometimes you have to say, yes, this is the best I can do. There's some things I can just not. I've got to the ceiling of that.
Yeah.
But there's other things I know I can push on through, and it's amazing how, like, just getting, like, maybe doing a course or getting a teacher or something that really helped me, which wasn't sort of related to lettering, but YouTube side of things, was that YouTube offer free training once you get to 10,000 subscribers. And so I went along to like an editing session, and literally there was one thing they mentioned and it cut the time it took me to edit in half. And so it's just that constant need just to fill your brain, because it's not like you're going to take it all on. It's just that there might be something that can really just
absolutely
set off a spark in terms of not just generally like creatively, but just like, I've never thought of stuff like that. That's going to really help me. And like, that's why
that's part of the feedback loop too, because like as you do it, you start to get connected with bigger and bigger people that are doing bigger things. And then you're starting to have this feedback loop of more professional people that are more successful, and they're feeding you more, like you're saying with the YouTube, you get to a certain point and they invite you over there. And then you see, all of a sudden you see something that cuts your productivity, doubles it in editing. Or like Will Talk, like I've gleaned so many things like from random conversations we've had during the show that I get because I'm around you guys all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, of course, it's brilliant.
And you know what yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that was it. I think just the last thing I was going to say was, I can't remember where the phrase comes from, but it's useful to think in the beginning for me to remember what can I control and what can I control. So focus on changing the inputs that I can control and ignore the ones I can't. Like when I was starting, I was like, okay, I can't control if I make sales. I can't control if someone decides to buy. I can't control if they choose to feature me this place or that place. But I can control every single Tuesday something's coming out. Like I can control that. So I would just be like, okay, well, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to just pound away at that nonstop.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, because that goes in with what I was going to mention, that it's about what I think the common denominator we all kind of have, if I'm not mistaken, is that it's what you're consuming the whole time. If you want to progress forward, and you want to evolve, you're going to consume things that are going to help that mission. And I just find that people who are possibly stagnant or haven't, kind of broken out of their sort of cycle, or they're trying to move faster, they're not consuming the things that are helping them to get there. They're just doing the same things, or they're comparing themselves to their peers. They're not actually curious enough to find stuff that's going to help them to the next step or the next level.
I think
the way,
sorry
the way we're so eager this episode, we all want to chime in.
It's a bad stop. No.
So it is a really interesting topic, and I'm glad it is for you guys, because I'm just obsessed over this stuff, and I find the older I get, the more I obsess over it. And I think it's fair to say that consistency alone is not enough. It has to be consistent iteration, i.e. consistent small improvements. And I think they really add up. So if we're going back to that line, that's like horizontal line, very, very gradually increasing, something I've noticed, whether it's your design work or your creative business, or even like celebrities, you can map this to a lot of people that have become successful. It will be the compound effect of loads of tiny improvements day to day, but then you will have some breakthrough moments as well. So it might be like tiny, tiny little efforts that you put in each day on a consistent basis that add up over time. But then you get like your first book deal, and that breaks you up to like the next echelon a lot more suddenly. Or if there's some influencers that land a TV show or something like that, or a big partnership. Do you know what I mean? And I've become really attuned to watching people that are kind of on the ascendancy and not just designers. And I find it so interesting because I pay attention to the little daily iterations and work they put in consistently, and then I pay attention to the bigger breakout moments where they really seem to fire up into the stratosphere, and then they tick along for a while at that level, just gradually improving, and then they have the next thing that swings them up. And I can see that with so many designers as well. And I think that's why I'm loving like my side hustle. And I think have we all got side hustles? So Dustin, you've got your passive income for designers. I've got my personal podcast, etc., and helping people. Lisa, you've got your surface pattern stuff. That's kind of a side hustle, right? Ian, YouTube. I know it kind of ties in.
It's all it's harder to I suppose so. I suppose it's still not.
Let's say
it's not something that it's as and when sort of thing. Because I think what I love about that though is that we practice what we preach, and that's partly why I'm doing it. It's not just to scratch that creative itch, but I never want us to be the people that have kind of to an extent made it and then lose touch with what it's like in those early phases. I freaking love the early phases. So it's why right now I'm putting in so much work alongside running my company on my side hustle. But I literally had the conversation with my fiance saying, I'm expecting this to properly pay off in 10 years' time. And so currently I'm spending hours and hours every day eating into time with her, eating into my personal time and my downtime, spending nearly $1,000 a month out of my own pocket to allow me to employ people part-time to help me scale it. So it's like time and money and resources and ungodly amounts of patience for something that might pay off in 10 years' time. And like the emotional stress and relationship stress. Like, so
it will.
And I know it will. Like, it's done. Like in my head, it's done. Now I just have to wait and see it play out. But I really enjoy that process because I'm not sat here being like, well, I got my business, so good luck to you youngsters starting out. It's like I'm literally doing the exact same thing they are right now, but it's just that I might have more patience and perspective than they have.
I was just thinking of like, also it comes down to like the priorities and the decisions you make. I was just thinking of like, if someone came to me and said, okay, you've got to give up one of your subscriptions and the 2 subscriptions you have to like remove for the rest of your life, would it be Netflix or would it be Skillshare? or any other learning platform to just because I use Skillshare. So, you know, if I for me, I would choose, I'd have to keep Skillshare
Definitely.
and get rid of Netflix, because I know that my business would then never grow if I chose Netflix. And I think it's that mentality of choosing, there's a choice of prioritizing what's important to you and your business over, you know, everything else. And just learning has been such a massive thing for, like, I didn't really invest in much. When I was doing genuine graphic design, I would get a book on, like, I taught myself CSS, so coding for websites, and I think that's where it started, because I did that. If I hadn't done that, then I wouldn't have done a website for the work I was working at, and then the people behind that website who like host them, a bit like Squarespace, but back in the day when it wasn't all fancy. And they said, would you like to come and work for us? You know, part-time, we'll give you some projects. And that employed me for the next 7 years. So if I hadn't picked up that one book, you know, learned that language off my own back, then I wouldn't have seen. And I could have just, like, you know, and the alternative.
Ian, you missed out on Game of Thrones season 1. So
I know.
But I've just got to point out, I know you mentioned in the beginning you're coming from an angle of somebody who feels like they're just kind of plodding along or thinking that that's the end, like, you know, that's all there is kind of thing. I have to, like, beg to differ, because it's clearly in your personality to be inquisitive, and you're not scared to try. You're not scared to start from the bottom. You're not scared to figure stuff out, you know. So,
but I don't think that comes from being like, I'm quite happy with just, you know, or I was back then. I think it's hard when you do get some success. I think that's the downside, is that you're living in the shadow of a greatest hit of my chili pepper click feed.
No, I get it.
You know, that's always going to be sitting on my shoulder. Like, nothing's ever going to get as much traction as this. And so,
but it will.
Except you would never, like, you know, you'd be bored out of your mind. I can never just picture
what it comes out of is, I'm quite happy to go along the horizontal, you know, steady line, but I get bored easily. And that's not to do with, like, I've got to get up to here. It's just that I'm like, that's my personality. Is like,
exactly.
That's why, and that's something that's, like, subconsciously I've used in my business. So the only reason I'm using the iPad now is because I was getting bored just maybe using pens and a paper. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll use this and see what that's like. And then maybe I'll use this and see what that's like. And I think it's just, and sometimes that just ends in a dead end. But
you try.
Yeah. And like, it's a reason why I solved the Rubik's Cube. I was like, oh, I've never solved this before. Let me try it and learn how to do it.
I love that nature. I feel like, and I mean this as a compliment, it is almost like a child, but in a
I feel like a 40-year-old child.
But I honestly, I love that. I think that's such a good way to be. When everyone's all like blinkered and pessimistic as they get older, the fact you've got that inquisitive nature, I think that's one of your best traits.
Something I hear quite often is people say, I could never do what you're doing. I've never had the patience. And actually, that is true for so many people, that if you can put your head down for 2 years, whatever industry you're working in, and regularly put stuff out, content and stuff like that, you will start to get interest. You know, you start to people interested in what you're doing. The problem is, so many people are not patient. You know, and so having patience is such an amazing attribute to your business. Just as
or being delusional, I think. So,
what, patience being a delusion?
Because, like, when I was doing it, I wasn't patient, but I constantly thought I was right on to it. So I'd keep leaping, thinking it was right around the corner, and that kept me going.
Yeah.
It looked like patience from the outside. It was really just.
Were you there with
delusion.
your wife being like, trust me, honey, it's the next big thing, I'm telling you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm more like you, Dustin. I think that's what drove me as well. I kept thinking, it's tomorrow or
Yeah, I
next
was like,
week.
this is it. This is it, baby.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like there's a scene from an English TV show called Only Fools and Horses.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
His saying for years, it's like from back in the 80s, his saying was, next time, Rodney, we're going to be millionaires.
No,
And all they're
this time
selling
next
is, like,
year,
markets. Yeah.
Yeah.
All they're doing is selling like knockoff goods down a market in London. And so, you think this is never going to happen. And then eventually they do in the sort of like later episodes because they find something in a garage, which is like an old, was it an old
great.
timepiece or something that's just worth,
Yeah.
I know.
But they would never have found it if they weren't doing their little silly thing.
Exactly.
On the side.
It goes to show that their patience actually, sometimes that doesn't work out, but their patience was actually rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people think of like, oh, next year, we're going to get that breakthrough, but they're not putting in the steps for that. There's that sort of thing where people think, oh, you're lucky you got your big break, but actually big breaks come from like luckiness.
Your
doesn't
10,000
actually,
million hours. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's putting all those feelers out there,
Yeah.
constantly putting posts on different social media, stuff that's really that works, people engage with and stuff like that. And the problem is, I don't think people understand how long it takes to filter through the internet. Like a bit of like.
What's interesting is so for the course I'm doing, I had looked at about why people continuing doing things, and I found an article in Psychology Today, and it said that people are more likely to follow through on things if they believe they're competent. If they believe they're competent, if they're confident that they're competent, not that they are competent. And I thought about that, and I thought that's true. I've seen people where they were not very good, but they thought they were competent, and those are the people that you're kind of like, how did they ever make it? And then all of a sudden, like, they're doing it forever, and they start doing really good. They thought they were competent, even though they weren't, and that kept them going long enough to launch stuff and eventually get good. And it was the same thing with like when I built my business. I had a baby on the way, so I was so desperate to get something going that I overrid the circuit in my brain of even caring if I was competent. I didn't. The competence didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was that things were being pushed out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's so true.
it's funny because like a lot of these things look the same. Confidence. I mean,
Fear.
yeah, like if you're being fearful, and doing something looks very much like being perseverant. Looks very much like having an inquisitive mind where you want to learn when actually you're just desperate and scared to death. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's whatever the output that you actually see on the outside is all that matters, and it might be. Some might be more healthy than others, but whatever does it for you, I guess.
Exactly. So true.
Can I just say
Yes, you can.
the temperature in this office, because I have to turn on the air conditioning. This is commitment to the show, people. I can't have the air conditioning on because it's really loud, so it would interfere with the audio. We've been recording an hour. It is 35.5 degrees Celsius in this office right now.
Wow.
And
you are looking a little bleak.
We've got giant glass windows at the front with the sun shining directly on me through it. So it's like a greenhouse effect. I genuinely feel like I'm about to pass out into the microphone. So we might need to have closing thoughts because I think I might die otherwise.
We don't want that, Tom.
Oh.
What degree is that for us Americans? Oh, that's 95. It's 96 degrees in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty warm, right?
Yeah, that's like a tropical region.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I've got about 60 seconds until hospital, I think. So
or we could just keep going until finally you just like go into like a nice, relaxing sleep.
I don't even,
night, Tom.
Mate, I don't even have time to joke right now. I'm like sodden in this t-shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, holy crap!
You hear I'm not complaining, and I'm in the same country.
I'm struggling to have the usual banter, if I'm being honest.
I was gonna say you look a little
Also, Ian's hair is like blowing in the wind. You can tell he's got air conditioning.
Oh, I haven't got air conditioning.
Looks like you're in a convertible.
Okay.
I got the door closed. They've got no wind coming in.
So final thoughts. Basically, paying your dues and persevering and being patient are so incredibly key. Complaining does not achieve anything.
anything.
Like being jealous of those ahead of you, pointing fingers with the blame. I'm after this, when I pump the aircon back on in this place, I'm going to do a post about the Instagram algorithm because I'm so sick of everyone just pointing fingers and being like, wow, the algorithm's out to get me. It's like, great, that doesn't help you. Crying about it does not help you. The same way you can sit and cry about getting no work, or you can do an Ian and go and like develop your skills, or Dustin and go and mix up your circumstance and be delusional and like try new things, or Lisa and just be lovely and charming because that gets you a long way in life too.
There's a test they do on children where they give them a marshmallow. It's called a marshmallow test. And they say, you can eat that marshmallow now, or if you wait 5 minutes, I'll give you another marshmallow. And supposedly this determines how well they're going to do in life, whether they take that marshmallow then or wait and have 2 marshmallows in 5 minutes.
Maybe they just had a bad sleep that night and like their self-control is off. Like,
I would definitely
That's a lot of
wait.
Yeah,
pressure.
it's still the same thing, isn't it? If they've got that drive to
be patient. What if they're like, so little Timmy, you actually took the marshmallow before I started the question, which means you're going to be a drug addict when you're older.
what if they just take all the marshmallows from the other kids and steal them? And then like,
what about if they got both the marshmallows and then sold them off to the other kids?
yes.
It's going to be like
that
Pablo
would be me.
And then
Escobar.
bought a whole bag of marshmallows. Now that would be taking it to another level.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
That's like
Yep.
Elon Musk. You know, I'm starting to really think out of the box.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
like it. I like it.
entrepreneur level. That is.
All right, guys, I'm going to go take an ice bath. It's been a pleasure.
We should do the
As
marshmallow
ever.
test next time.
I hope this was helpful for everyone listening at home. Dustin, I hope you enjoy your narcissistic rubber stamp.
I will. I will be using this on everything.
Awesome. All right, and we will see you guys next week. Bye from us.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes and now Spotify by searching for The Honest Designers Show. And remember, we're now on social media too if you search for Honest Designers. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.